Who will occupy the Millennial Kingdom? A presentation of God Questions Ministries. There will be two distinct groups occupying the earth during the Millennial Kingdom. Those with glorified bodies, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, who were raptured prior to the tribulation, and those with earthly bodies who lived through the tribulation and on into the Millennial Kingdom. The group who have earthly bodies can be subdivided into two groups, believing Gentiles and believing Jews, or Israel. In Revelation 19, verses 11 through 16, we find the return of Jesus Christ to earth, known as His second coming. The rapture, 1 Corinthians 4, verses 13 through 18, is an appearing of Christ in the air, not His second coming. This is included to make a distinction between the rapture and the second coming of Christ. There is no mention in Revelation chapters 19 and 20 of any kind of rapture event where believers receive glorified bodies. The implication is that saints who are on earth when Christ returns will remain on earth to enter the Millennial Kingdom in their natural bodies. If the rapture, or any kind of event where a believer receives a glorified body, were included in the second coming of Christ to earth, one would expect to find reference to such a major event in Revelation chapter 19, but no such reference is to be found. Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46 is another passage that should be considered. This passage is commonly called the separation or judgment of the sheep and the goats. The sheep and goats refer to righteous and unrighteous Gentiles. Christ will judge the unrighteous Gentiles, the goats, and they will be cast into the lake of fire for eternal punishment. Matthew 25, verse 46. Therefore, no unbelieving Gentile will survive to live on into the Millennial Kingdom. The righteous Gentiles, or sheep, will live on into the Millennial Kingdom. They will give birth to children and will populate the earth. However, these are not the only ones who will be producing children during the Millennial Kingdom. The impression is given that when Christ returns, all Israel will trust in Him, Zechariah 12, verse 10. They too will not receive glorified bodies, as those did who were raptured prior to the tribulation. They also will produce children during the Millennial Kingdom. So, believing Gentiles, Israel, and resurrected, raptured believers, all of whom have glorified bodies, will occupy the earth. It should be noted, however, that believers with glorified bodies will not be reproducing. There is no marriage after this life. Matthew 22, verse 30. Children born during the Millennial Kingdom will have the responsibility of faith in Christ, as all people of past ages have. Faith in Christ since His coming, faith in God before. Genesis 15, verses 2 through 6, Romans 3, verse 20. Unfortunately, not all of the children that are born during the Millennial Kingdom will come to faith in Christ. Those who do not will be led away by Satan into rebellion against God at the end of the Millennial Kingdom, when Satan is let loose for a short time. Revelation 20, verses 7 through 10. For a further look at this subject, who will live into the Millennial Kingdom, look also at these passages: Isaiah 2, verses 2 through 4, Zechariah 14, verses 8 through 21, Ezekiel 34, verses 17 through 24, Daniel 7, verses 13 and 14, and Micah 4, verses 1 through 5. This has been a presentation of God Questions Ministries, www.godquestions.org.